Welcome back to Fluent Vibes. I'm your host, and as promised, we're diving into another thrilling story today, a completely new one. This is a place where gripping tales meet valuable lessons in English, helping you not only learn, but also feel the language in every word, every pause, and every punctuation mark. Today's story is intense, dark, and full of twists that will keep you hooked until the very end. Let's begin. Story title: The Vanishing Train. It was a cold, misty evening, and the small train station on the outskirts of town felt almost deserted. Only a handful of people waited on the platform, their faces pale and tired under the flickering yellow lights. Among them was Ethan, a journalist known for chasing stories that others wouldn't dare touch. He clutched his camera tightly, his breath fogging up in the chilly air. Tonight, he was here not for a train ride, but for a mystery, a ghost story that had been whispered about for decades. The tale went like this. Every year, on the same night, a train would arrive at this station. But it wasn't an ordinary train. The passengers were never seen stepping off, and those who boarded never returned. Ethan didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in stories. And if this one could make headlines, it was worth the sleepless night. The station master's voice crackled through the loudspeaker. The 10:50 train to Ravens Hollow will arrive shortly on platform 3. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Ravens Hollow? That town had been abandoned years ago. The idea of a train heading there seemed absurd. He glanced at the others on the platform. Most were regular commuters, except for one man. The man stood apart from the crowd, dressed in a vintage suit that looked like it belonged in the 1920s. His hat was tilted low, hiding most of his face, but Ethan could see the glint of his eyes in the dim light. There was something unnerving about him. Something off. Ethan approached cautiously. "Excuse me, are you waiting for the Ravens Hollow train too?" The man didn't respond. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something Ethan couldn't hear. Before Ethan could ask again, the sound of a distant whistle pierced the air. The train was approaching. The train screeched into the station, its brakes screaming against the tracks. It was an old steam locomotive, its body blackened with soot and rust. Smoke billowed from its chimney, curling around the platform like ghostly fingers. Ethan's heart raced. He lifted his camera and began snapping photos, the flash cutting through the fog. But as the train came to a halt, something strange happened. The passengers on the platform began boarding silently, one by one. None of them spoke, and their faces were blank, almost trance-like. Ethan hesitated. Should he get on? This was the moment he had been waiting for, but fear clawed at his chest. The man in the vintage suit turned to him, finally speaking in a low, gravely voice. "If you get on this train, you'll never come back." Ethan swallowed hard. "Why? What happens on board?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped onto the train, disappearing into the shadows. Against his better judgment, Ethan followed. Inside the train. The air was thick and heavy, carrying a strange metallic scent. The carriage was dimly lit, with flickering lanterns hanging from the ceiling. Ethan glanced around, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The other passengers sat stiffly in their seats, their eyes fixed straight ahead. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Ethan slid into an empty seat near the back, clutching his camera tightly. He felt the train lurch forward, its wheels grinding against the tracks. "Where are we going?" he whispered to himself. A voice answered from behind him. "To Ravens Hollow. Where else?" Ethan spun around, startled. An old woman sat behind him, her wrinkled face illuminated by the dim light. Her eyes were cloudy, as if she had seen too much. "Why is everyone so quiet?" Ethan asked. She chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. "They've already made their choice, but you still have time to leave." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean? What choice?" The old woman leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "This train doesn't take passengers. It takes souls." The turning point. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He looked out the window, but the fog was so thick that he couldn't see anything beyond it. The train seemed to be moving faster, the wheels clattering louder with each passing second. He stood up, his instincts screaming at him to leave. But as he made his way to the door, he realized something horrifying. There was no handle. Panic set in. He turned back to the old woman, but her seat was empty. In fact, all the passengers had disappeared. The carriage was completely empty now, except for him. The lights flickered, and the train screeched to a halt. The doors slid open, revealing a dark, desolate landscape. Raven's Hollow. The final revelation. Ethan stepped off the train, his camera still in hand. The town was eerily quiet, its buildings crumbling under the weight of time. He ventured deeper, his footsteps echoing on the cracked pavement. Then he saw it, a small graveyard at the center of town. As he approached, he noticed something chilling. The gravestones bore the names of the passengers he had seen on the platform. And then he saw his own name. Ethan stumbled back, his heart pounding. A voice echoed behind him, the same voice from the train. "You made your choice," it said, "and now you're one of us." Key takeaway: emotions in speech. Did you notice how the story used punctuation like an and to convey emotion and suspense? When you speak English, these marks are your guide to sounding natural and engaging. Use exclamation marks to show excitement, fear, or urgency. For example, "What's happening?" Use question marks to express doubt, curiosity, or disbelief. For example, "Where are we going?" Combine them for dramatic moments like, "You can't be serious?" Practice speaking lines from today's story, exaggerating your tone to match the punctuation. Let your voice rise, fall, and tremble with emotion. Practice challenge. 1. Imagine you're Ethan, trying to escape the train. Write your own lines of dialogue using "and" to show fear and urgency. 2. Record yourself reading those lines aloud, focusing on expression. That's it for today's story. I hope you enjoyed this thrilling ride on the vanishing train. Stay tuned for our next episode, where a new tale awaits. Until then, keep practicing, keep exploring, and let your voice bring your English to life.